All right. So we're going to get to what most men would do. Are you guys seeing the difference here in body habitus? Let's just say. Are you looking at the difference between, like, I would say if you were going to put this couple in, let's say, sexual market value ratio terms, where would you put, let's see, the chat, where would you put Derrick versus his wife? I can't remember. Danae, what is her name? His wife. Do you think that there is a ratio balance, but are they equally yoked? 100 to 1. Yeah, thanks. What's the ratio here? Like who outvalues who in the sexual marketplace? You could say the same thing about, like, say, Ayesha Curry and Steph Curry as well, right? Clearly, Steph Curry is a Hall of Fame, NBA player, and if you look at Ayesha, yeah. At what point do you kind of go, well, he's going to do what he's going to do? He outvalues her, yes. Now, did he outvalue her when they got married? That's the next question. And I would say absolutely. Yeah, she hit the jackpot. She won the jackpot. And then what happens is, I mean, look at the guy. You could tell dude's yoked, 6'5". Is that what he is? Is he actually 6'5"? I don't know how tall the guy actually is, but she hit the jackpot, and most likely due to the fact that he was brought up in a family, or brought up in a way where he was doing what he thought was the right thing to do. Find a girl in high school, marry your high school sweetheart. Doesn't matter. You fall in love. It's I see a lot of this happen in sort of maybe in Baptist culture, Baptist. I presume. I'm being presumptive. Maybe I'm wrong, but I see this happen in evangelical and in a Christian sense, let's just say, as to what is the right way and the wrong way to go about things, right? Well, what's degenerate and what's not? I got your post there. Don't worry. I'm going to come back to you there. Dark Knight, I starred your chat. Don't worry. I'm not going to lose you because it's relevant to what we're talking about here. But you're looking at a very much a red pill, pro red pill analysis here, Selly. So Selly, if you're watching, and I hope you still are, I'm going to explain this to you. So you have a couple that gets together early in life, and the woman in this case, I would say, and this is just me being objective about this, is she's probably about 2 points below him, even when they get together. I have an essay. I'll call it maybe Sam Bada, can you go look it up for me? It's it's SMV ratios in SMV and ratios, I think is what it is. I don't think I've ever put it in any, maybe I have. It's in the second book. Anyways, a chapter in the second book, I believe, which is like SMV ratios, and what's the differential between, say, like, let's just say you're a 5 and she's a 5, or you're a 5 and she's a 7. We talk about this all the time when it comes to hypergamy, but we don't really look at it when the guy outranks the girl. When we look at hypergamy, and by the way, hypergamy is really only goes one way. Only women are hypergamous, and there ain't no hypogamous bullshit here. Okay, we can come back to that at some point. However, when we look at hypergamy, we look at women who are looking for a guy who is, at least perceptually anyways, a step above them on sexual market value. So we always say this, and you'll hear this from black pill doomers, and you'll hear this from, MGTOW guys that say that the juice ain't worth the squeeze, and why would I do that? She's just going to go cheat on me when she finds a guy that looks like Derrick Jaxn, right? When she's like, if she's a 6 and I'm a 6, then I better have some value added to me to put me above all the other 6s, but also to take her eyes off of the 7s that she thinks she deserves, right? So what happens is you got a guy who's a 6 and she's a 6, and you meet each other, say, at 25 years old. We were both 25. She's a 6. You're a 6. She objectively thinks she's a 7 or an 8 thanks to social media. However, you guys are effectively, realistically, both 6s on the sexual market value scale. Now, if that's the case, women will get with another 6. However, that guy has to have something of value, has to have something external, has to make a lot of money, has to love her in a way, has to lay down good. He's got a 10-inch personality, if you know what I mean. He's got to have something else going for him to distract her, let's just say, from investing in a guy who's a 7. or an 8 for that matter. And so we know that hypergamy works in sort of this hierarchy of 100% of women want to get with the top 20% of guys. I would put Derrick Jaxn in the top, certainly in the top 20, at least in the top 20% of guys when they got married. Now, I would put her down at probably around a 4 at that time. I don't know. You can, people say, well, don't take that personally, ladies. I'm saying like in the sexual market value terms. And I would certainly put him at like a 6 or a 7. Like if she's a 4, 6. Now, this is when they get started. Now, he's much more than that now. But at that time, if there's a differential between, like, say, there's 2 points of difference where he's way more valuable and they get what they want. The woman is a 5 and she gets with a 7. That woman has to find ways to lock down that guy, to gaslight him, or there has to be some psychological mechanisms that keep that guy who is a 7 from ever figuring out how valuable he is on the market himself. And so you'll constantly get this, you ain't shit. There's this constant like browbeating, or there's this constant devaluation of a guy who is, if that woman is a 5 and she's with a 7, or she's a 5 and she's, God forbid, she's with an 8. That's when women get really possessive and jealous, like insanely jealous. And so what happens then is you see sort of these psychological mechanisms, and playing the God card is one of them. You're supposed to love me and only me, blah, blah, blah. You should, beauty's only skin deep, right? Beautiful at any size, beautiful at any weight, beautiful at any age. There's a lot of psychological their social contrivances is what they're, kind of conventions is what they're called. And they're there not just for women, but they're there for men too. So that men never start thinking that they're bigger and better than they actually are. Because if they do, then they would realize that they're an 8 that is yoked with a 5 or a 4. And that differential, by the way, gentlemen, expands as that woman gets older. As her sexual market value decays, his goes up. So here's the lesson that we can learn from Derrick Jaxn. Here's the first lesson that we can learn from Derrick Jaxn. We can learn this. So when the woman is, say, 23 years old and she's at her peak SMV value, and that man is on his come up, right? He's right around 23 himself. If he's building out his potential, and I would arguably Derrick Jaxn was building out his potential, he's on his ascendancy, and right after 23, she's on her descendancy. Now, if her sexual market value peak was, say, 20, and I don't know when they got married, so don't come at me, but if her sexual market value peak is at 23 and she's a 5 or a 6 at 23, what does that make her once she hits 30? What does that make her when she hits 33? Is she half as valuable again? I don't know, because it depends on what that woman's dedication to her her own potential is. Does she still make herself sexy? Does she still, or does she get like bitchy and self-entitled and hubristic? It all kind of depends on the individual woman. But what doesn't change is that a woman's sexual market value decays as she ages, simply because that's how men are and that's how women are. And so when a guy goes from 23 and now he's 36 or 37 years old and he's at his ascendancy, and now again, I don't come at me and tell me, oh, well, he's actually 50, right? When he gets to that peak potential and he's made the most of that potential, while she is much lower, it will helps women to ensure their investment in that guy if he still believes that God will punish him with hellfire if he ever cheats on her. It helps that woman in her investment with that guy in long-term security with a guy, a winning bet that she made back when she was in her 20s and she was at her peak, that guy believes in blue pill idealism, well, for the rest of his life, really. But what happens is when a guy gets to that time, gets to about 37, 38 years old, that's when women love to say that men have fragile egos, or they complain about guys who are the men that they want. They're apex examples of the kinds of guys that they want to get with. But they complain that those guys are only interested in the 23-year-olds, the 25-year-olds, because now if a man develops his sexual market value and he develops his personal potential up to the point where he's 36, 37 years old. And now he has the same, hopefully the same, if not more, sexual selectivity that a woman had when she was 23 years old, and he's still single. That's when his married friends' wives don't want him to hang out with him anymore because they don't want them to get any bright ideas. Because now that guy is in a position of sexual selectivity that most men never, ever reach in their entire lives. In fact, I would argue that a lot of times men's peak potential is limited by the beliefs that women instill in those guys because they don't want them to excel to the point where they see them as like, well, now I'm an 8 and you're a 6, and now I can go and fuck hotter bitches. That's why. It's what's called opportunity cost, like loss of investment, like ROI, right? It's losing the investment of that woman's sexual capital in that guy. So she made a bet on that guy. Now that guy is a raging success. Now that guy, it looks like Derrick Jaxn at 36 years old, has money, is rewarded for it, is rewarded by women, and clearly, like and you're right, you're correct. I think Valhalla was talking about this. He's the black Matt Hussey is what he is. He jumped in on that grift, and and by to his credit, he's been very good at it. I think it's completely damaging to women. That we're gonna find out why here in a second. I think it's entirely damaging to women, but I also think that it's also damaging to guys because guys buy into the same gaslighting and the same belief set that women are hoping those guys will maintain when they get to that peak potential. So you got the Gary Vee situation where Gary Vee meets his wife when he's 23 and he's like gung ho and, oh, I love her to death. And, the church says this and blah, blah, blah. And then now he's divorcing her to the tune. I don't know how many millions he's like spending on that divorce. But, when you get to that point, maybe he's okay with that because now he has access to like women that he never probably in his lifetime would have access to had he not developed his personal potential. And this is like very distressing to women. That's why Selly is saying this isn't pro red pill. This is negative. No. This is a absolutely shining example of where to go. It's a perfect example of the SMV curve. Derrick Jaxn has just basically with this divorce and by the fact of him actually initiating the divorce proves these bell curves once again. Thank you, Derrick, for your shining example for all of this.
Cheers.